Hi, I'm Devjit Das, and the following is my take on the motion that I was asked to submit a first proposition speech on. And as far as I can remember, although the motion is not right exactly in front of me right now, it read, This House believes that all dynastic leaders should be banned from contesting in political elections. And I am here today to prove to you exactly how valid and true that motion really is. And okay, let me start off first things first, right? Let me start off by saying that let me start off by giving you perhaps the most quintessential example of all. I mean, all of us are being Indians, all of us are familiar with the Nehru Gandhi dynasty, and if you look at the Nehru Gandhi dynasty, what they have done right before independence in 1947 and even after independence we attained in 1947, what they have done is that they have systematically not only acquired control of the Congress party but also maintained that control, and in order to secure the control they have passed it down from one generation to the other. And it was Motilal Nehru who was right in the beginning not very, he was some sort of a organizer for the freedom struggles which were taking place back in the 30s and 20s, but he wasn't very actively involved in politics. It was his son Jawaharlal who rose through the ranks of the Congress party and established himself as one of the most dependable and charismatic and significant people in the political movement in India at that time. But after India gained independence, after India was partitioned, Jawaharlal Nehru, it was his son Jawaharlal Nehru who established himself as perhaps one of the most dependable and charismatic leaders in the political atmosphere in India at that time, and that is perhaps what made him prime minister later on. And he held that post for what 15 years following independence, and when he died we had a few prime ministers in the middle, but eventually in the 70s it was again his daughter Indira who again took control of the Congress party and established her own government. And if you have paid any attention in your history classes, you'll know that all the successive governments, right from 1947 to 1999, when Atal Bihari Vajpayee came to power, India was ruled for more than 50 years by the same party. And although the party had produced only three prime ministers during that time, all the other prime ministers were more or less controlled by the leading political family, which was the Gandhi family. And I know that I've been talking about the Gandhi family a lot, but let's move on and let's analyze and look at a few more examples of very prominent political families in India right now. You have the Rashtriya Janata Dal, which was founded by Lalu Prasad Yadav, and has ever since been ruled by Lalu Prasad Yadav. And I mean, signs of nepotism are very prevalent and visible in his governments, when his sons Tej Pratap and Tej Singh and his daughters were employed in the government and given very key and important portfolios and ministries, when they only happen to hold class 12 or class 12 degrees. I mean, two of his sons have not even graduated from school, and they are heading important ministries in a state government in India, and that too the government of a state which is as important to the economic system of India as Bihar. Moving on, just looking at a few more examples, we have the Samajwadi Party, which is again headed by the Yadav family, and there's a big tough war, family feud going on right now between father and son, father and uncle, son and uncle, and a lot of other people. I mean, then you have the DMK back down south in India, which is primarily controlled by MK Stalin and his successors, his sons. Then you have a few more political parties, minor ones perhaps, but equally important in the local ecosystem, which are headed by which are headed, by one family, and this one family controls all the activities of the party, and all the other legislators and lawmakers and members of that party have a very suppressed vote and say in what actually in the ultimate decision making of that party. Moving on, we have more examples. I mean, let's broaden the scope, right? Let's move out of India. See, one reason why I would say that dynastic leaders should be banned from contesting in political elections in a democratic country is that because if they do win the elections, which they do in most cases, what really happens is that nepotism creeps in, right? And if you're not familiar with the definition, nepotism, it is basically one person, one person taking unfair advantage of his federal position in a government or in some sort of official capacity, and thereby taking advantage of that position he holds and providing employment to one or more of his family members by taking unfair advantage of his position. Nepotism is a very serious thing which our world is, which most political climates in almost every country is trying to combat. And there are strict laws against it in most democratic countries, but if you look at the countries today in the world which are not democracies, which were either authoritarian and totalitarian, which were under either authoritarian or totalitarian rule in the past, or still are, many of these countries fell into this abyss only the rules of democracy. What really happened was countries such as North Korea, many countries in the Middle East, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and a lot others. What really happened was the people collectively elected one political leader, and after that, that political leader used his position to confer advantage of his position, unethical, immoral advantage of his position, and started filling his government with only members of his own family, his close ones, his near and dear ones, people whom he could trust on, and mostly members of his own family. When a democratic government is totally filled up with individuals belonging to one single family, it kind of blurs the line between a democracy and a monarchy, and that is the single most and the biggest problem with dynastic leaders contesting in political elections and winning these political elections. To sum it all up, to put it in a nutshell, the biggest reason why I would argue against dynastic leaders contesting in political elections is because once they get hold of power, once they manage to establish themselves and consolidate their authority in not only inside one party, within one party, but within one entire nation, what happens more often than not is that they systematically and very methodically eliminate their opponents. If you want a practical example of it, just look at the mysterious disappearances of all of Vladimir Putin's opponents. Ever since Vladimir Putin came to power ever since he was appointed president in the year 2008, if I'm not mistaken, he was the Prime Minister of Russia before 2008, and the then president and the current Prime Minister was the then president, and they practically just switched roles. The Prime Minister became the President became the Prime Minister, and Vladimir Putin displays many of the traits that Joseph Stalin was notorious for. Vladimir Putin's political opponents have been disappearing by the dozens every year, and the United States of America has raised this matter in the United Nations, but it has elicited very weak responses. Moving on, so yeah, as I was saying, dynastic leaders coming to power, establishing themselves, consolidating their authority and power, and then using that authority and power to eliminate their opponents is perhaps the biggest threat to democracy we have today. The totalitarian dictatorship in North Korea, you will see that Kim Sang II, who was the founder of North Korea, came to power, rose through the ranks, came to power based widely, he was carried by the people, right? He occupied that office through the people. It was the people of North Korea who elected him to that office. But once he reached that office, he did what any man in that position would do with so much of systematically eliminate his opponents. He consolidated his power. He basically went through the works, and then it was passed down to his son, Kim Jong Il. Kim Jong Il ruled for about 15 years before his death, and now it is his son, Kim Jong Un, who displays many of the characteristics his grandfather and father were infamous for. So basically, to put it in a nutshell, this is why I would say that dynastic leaders coming to power in democratic countries is perhaps the biggest threat to democracy itself. I mean, somebody on the other side would argue that in a democracy, everybody has an equal chance. Everybody should be given a chance. No matter where even if you are poor or rich, regardless of your caste, creed, religion, financial status, social status, everybody should be given a chance not only to vote but also to ask people to vote for them. But sometimes in order to preserve democracy, sometimes in order to preserve the core tenets of democracy, we must take extreme measures, and this is perhaps one of those protective measures which will ensure that democracy in this world continues to not only survive but also thrive in the near and distant future. And to cap it all off, I would like to end with a quote. A very famous quote indeed by George Orwell said that in the end it is power itself that corrupts, and I think that sums up my argument better than I could have ever hoped to achieve.